Dear students, let us start off with the continuation of our acid-base disorders workshop. We have been looking at some of the calculations related to metabolic acidosis. So let's continue doing that with a little more understanding. Just to recap of what we have done yesterday, see, anion gap metabolic acidosis, the mnemonic is METPILES, methanol, uremia, diabetic ketoacidosis, or starvation ketoacidosis, propylene glycol, isoniazid or isopropyl alcohol, lactic acidosis, ethylene glycol, and salicylates. Of these, I told you that uremia is the most important thing and diabetic ketoacidosis is very important. Lactic acidosis and salicylates, they rule the roost as far as the causes of metabolic acidosis are concerned. Needless to say, among all the disorders of acid-base balance, metabolic acidosis is the foremost one. Then is the metabolic alkalosis, relatively unrecognized is metabolic alkalosis. We will see that also today. We will also see respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. After that, in the next class onwards, we'll take up case scenarios and start calculating using the ABG values, and I'll tell you how to go about in a stepwise manner in that particular session. Before that, I am familiarizing you with some of the calculations and also the four important disorders: metabolic acidosis and alkalosis, respiratory acidosis and alkalosis. Now, non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, we know the mnemonic is used cars, ureterostigmoid diversions, and then saline administration, endocrinopathies like Addison's, hyperparathyroid, potassium sparing diuretics, diarrhea, very important cause, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, hyperalimentation, particularly acid containing solutions like Ringer lactate and others, and renal tubular acidosis. The other mnemonic for non-anion gap is harder, similar ones only: hyperalimentation, acetozolamide, renal tubular acidosis, both primary and tertiary, and then the diarrhea, ureterosigmoid diversions, and pancreatic fistula. So we need to look for the urine anion gap in conditions where we have anion gap normal acidosis. This is called the NAGMA. We need to look at the urine anion gap. Is it positive or is it negative? If it is negative, it is GUT, negative gut. Okay, now I am going to introduce another concept called the osmolality gap. This is important particularly for the differential diagnosis of acidosis. So what is the osmolality gap? What is the osmolality? Osmolality is in the plasma, in the serum, and in the extracellular fluid, there are osmotic substances. They exert an osmotic pressure, and the osmolality is determined by certain substances, particularly sodium, glucose, and the bun. So osmolar gap is the difference between what is called the measured osmolality as given by the lab people. They give the osmolality in the lab report, and you can calculate from the values that you have in hand. That is called the calculated osmolality. MO is measured osmolality and calculated osmolality is CO. So osmolality gap or osmolar gap is OG is equal to MO minus CO. Measured osmolality, subtract from that the calculated osmolality. So how do I calculate? For calculation, we require the values of sodium, glucose, and bun. The formula is 2 times sodium plus glucose in milligrams divided by 18, not in millimoles, remember here. Glucose in milligrams divided by 18. Likewise, bun also in milligrams divided by 2.8. So don't use millimoles instead of milligrams. So remember, we of course measure in milligrams and bun and glucose. So 2 times sodium, normal sodium is 140. 2 times the sodium is 280. Glucose, let us say, is 90, and divided by 18 will be 5. 90 divided by 18, 5 times 18 is 90. And bun 14 divided by 2.8, which is again 5. So the total osmolality, that is calculated osmolality, is 290. Suppose we give the sample to the lab and the lab gives a value. Let us say it gives 295. the difference will be measured osmolality is 295 minus calculated osmolality 290 is equal to 5. The other way around, let's say the lab gives 285. Then again it becomes measured osmolality in the lab 285 minus what is calculated. If the values are like that, it is minus 5. So it can vary at the most from minus 5 to minus 10 to plus 10. 95% of the patients, the osmolar gap, that is the measured minus calculated, will be either plus 10 to minus 10. Okay. What does this indicate? Suppose it is plus 10. I measured in the lab and I got some osmolarity and I calculated. That means there are some other substances which are not included in the calculation. What are they? They could be salicylate, they could be ethanol, they could be any other molecule which contributes for the osmotic pressure. Ketoacidosis, ketone bodies, and these contribute for the osmotic pressure which are not accounted in the calculation. But the lab measures them. In the lab, it doesn't discriminate whether it is sodium or glucose or ketone body or salicylate, but it just takes the osmolality as a measure there. So we get an excess gap, or MO minus CO will be positive or much higher, wherein there are substances which are osmotically active, which are other than sodium, other than glucose, and other than BUN. So that is the message. An osmolar gap OG value greater than 15 is considered a cutoff value. The presence of a low blood pH, that is acidosis, an elevated anion gap, and a greatly increased osmolar gap is a medical emergency. Suppose you have acidosis, there is anion gap acidosis, and OG also is very much increased. It is a medical emergency and it requires immediate treatment. Now you know how to calculate the osmolar gap. Let us do one small calculation. In a given patient, the sodium is, let us say, the sodium is equal to 135, and then the glucose is equal to 145 or 135. Glucose is equal to 135, and then BUN is 28. So what will be the calculated osmolarity? Calculated osmolarity will be 135 sodium into 2 is equal to 270 plus glucose 135 divided by 18. That will be 7.5. How do I know that? If it is 90, it is 5. Another 45 I have added, so another 2.5. That is 7.5. And 28 by 2.8 is equal to 10. That is the BUN. So 270 plus 10, 280 plus 7.5, 287.5. This is the calculated osmolarity. Let us say we have measured in the lab and got measured osmolarity as 298. Let us say the lab has given and we got around 287 or 87.5. It will be plus 10.5. That is the difference that is called the osmolar gap. I told you, if it is more than 15 plus, there are other osmotically active substances. Even hyperglycemia also pulls the osmotic pressure up, and renal failure also pulls the osmotic pressure up. But it is reflected in the calculated osmolarity also. But if it is other than glucose and BUN, then it cannot be reflected in the calculated. It will only come in the lab value. So that is why you need to know how to calculate an osmolar gap. So you knew how to calculate an anion gap. You also knew how to calculate a urine anion gap. You also knew how to calculate a delta anion gap and the delta bicarbonate, and now the osmolar gap. Let us go a little further. Now, metabolic acidosis by definition, a pH of less than 7.35. So let's say in this patient, it is 7.35. Bicarbonate normal is 24. Here bicarbonate is depressed because of the metabolic acidosis, and secondarily the lung also compensates, and then the secondary variable PCO also will be lower. That means in metabolic acidosis, pH will be lower, and then HCO3 will be lower, and carbon dioxide partial pressure also will be lower. All three are in the same direction. MD, metabolic acidosis, same direction. Direction is the same in metabolic acidosis. First of all, you look at the pH of the blood. If the pH is lower, look at the bicarbonate. If that is also lower, it is metabolic, because compensatory variable is carbon dioxide and not bicarbonate. Primary variable is bicarbonate. So pH is lower, bicarbonate is lower. Compensatorily to excrete excess acid as carbonic acid, more carbon dioxide is washed out from the lung, and then that is because of increased respiratory hyperventilation and depth of respiration. The PCO2 drops, and we also know how much drop of PCO2 will occur for each drop of bicarbonate. So that is the pH low, bicarbonate low, PCO2 low, all three in the same direction. Metabolic acidosis direction is the same. Now, immediately next question is, am I dealing with anion gap, increased anion gap, or am I dealing with a normal anion gap? Normal anion gap is 10 plus minus 2. How do I get the anion gap? Sodium minus chloride plus bicarbonate is the anion gap. If sodium is 140 and chloride is, let us say, is 95 and bicarbonate is 15 and this is 110, that is 30, which is very high, it's increased anion gap. Whereas it is less than 10 or 10 plus minus 2, it is a normal anion gap. The next question, after identifying metabolic acidosis from the three parameters above, a low pH, low bicarbonate and low carbon dioxide partial pressure, all indicating metabolic acidosis. Then the next question is there an anion gap widening or not? If it is normal, then it is not the excess acid that is the cause, it is loss of the base, as bicarbonate is the cause of acidosis. Acidosis can be caused by addition of H ions. Addition of H ions due to ingestion, salicylate, ketoacids, whatever it is. Or the excess loss of bicarbonate. So in this case, this loss of bicarbonate which is causing the acidosis, there is no change in the anion gap. It is not widened. The causes are diarrhea and renal tubular acidosis. Major causes are non-anion gap, diarrhea and RTA. In diarrhea, what happens? Bicarbonate is sent out through the diarrhea fluid. So we lose the bicarbonate. In renal tubular acidosis, what happens? The kidneys are unable to secrete the acid ion, either H ion or the ammonium ion, both ways. So kidneys is unable to secrete the H ion, kidney is unable to excrete the acid, so the bicarbonate is not brought back. Normally, how the bicarbonate is absorbed in the kidney? The hydrogen ion is secreted, this goes into the tubular lumen, catches hold of the bicarbonate and then brings it back into the system. So there is no force to bring it back because the H ions themselves are not secreted. So the bicarbonate is left in the urinary fluid and is wasted out. So this is a mechanism. Primarily there is an acid secretion problem. So acid is retained in the body that causes renal tubular acidosis. We come to that. There are several types of that, and how to differentiate them is a separate seminar by itself. We will do it. But remember here, non-anion gap acidosis, two important causes. One, GI loss in the form of diarrhea. Two, either type of renal tubular acidosis. In the first one, it is the bicarbonate that is wasted in the fluid, in the diarrhea. In the second one, it is failure of the acid ion secretion into the tubular lumen, so much so the bicarbonate is not captured and brought back and absorbed, reabsorbed into the circulation. This is a failure of the acid secretion, which results in renal tubular acidosis. Okay, now we have an increased anion gap as seen in this particular example here. Sodium 140, chloride 95, bicarbonate 15, and that calculation has come to 30. 30 is quite higher. And then we have to calculate the delta gap. delta gap is 30 minus normally allowed 10. So my delta anion gap is 20, which is plus minus 2 is allowed, but 20 is quite high. Then what am I dealing with? I am dealing with any one of the more important conditions. Either a lactic acidosis because of the hypoperfusion and hypoxemia person has suffered, myocardial infarction, whatever it is, and there is lactic acidosis, blood lactate increases. That is an anion which widens the anion gap. Apart from chloride and bicarbonate, lactic acid is the anion there. In diabetic ketoacidosis, starvation ketoacidosis, alcoholic ketoacidosis, the keto acids, beta-hydroxy, butyrate and acetoacetic acid, both are keto acids, and these are elevated in the plasma, and these give rise to anions which are neither chloride nor bicarbonate, so there is an increase in the anion gap. The second most important cause, in fact the first cause itself is the diabetic ketoacidosis, and in that order. Next one, of course, lactic acidosis, or there could be organic acids added to the system, as in case of salicylate poisoning, ethanol poisoning, ethylene glycol poisoning, paraldehyde poisoning. Excess amino acids are secreted into the plasma by tissue breakdown, or ammonia itself in renal failure. Ammonia itself generates a lot of urea, and that urea is split into the acid there, and that acid ions also contribute to the organic acidemias. So basically metabolic acidosis is either non-anion gap or increased anion gap. Non-anion gap acidosis, first cause is diarrhea, second important cause is RTA, and diarrhea, HCO3 is lost in the diarrhea fluid. If you look at the urine anion gap, it will be negative because it is not the kidney at fault. It is only the diarrhea fluid, so it is negative. Whereas in RTA, the urine anion gap will be positive. Here it is going to be urine anion gap will be negative. That's how I distinguish both of them. If I come to the increased anion gap, certainly there are acids which are other than chloride and bicarbonate which are added. The commonest one is ketoacidosis, second one is lactic acidosis, third one is uremia, of course the organic acids and uremia, and then other organic acidemias, as in case of salicylates, ethylene glycol, methyl alcohol, and we know the mud pies, all of them will be fitting into the increased anion gap acidosis. Now, let us go a little further on this. Now, this is called the double delta. What is double delta? Also called delta-delta. One delta is the anion gap delta. The other delta is the osmotic gap delta. Suppose the both are increased, that is anion gap when delta is increased, osmotic gap also is increased. We are dealing with ethanol, methylene, ethanol, ethyl alcohol, propylene glycol. Straight away the answer is there. Look at the osmotic gap and look at the anion gap. If both are widened, if delta anion gap and delta osmolar gap itself is delta, so if both of them are widened, then it is ethanol, methanol, or ethylene glycol, or propylene glycol. If the anion gap is normal but the osmotic gap is increased, it is isopropyl alcohol. Okay, when the anion gap is increased but the osmotic gap is normal, it is salicylates or acetaminophen is the answer. How do I know that? The Ag is analgesics, Ag alone. Ag alone is analgesics, Ag analgesics. Ag plus Og is MPEG. That is, M is methanol, P is propylene glycol, E is ethanol, ethylene glycol, and these are the G is glycol, is ethylene glycol, MPEG. Or only this is increased isopropyl alcohol. I only interest is isopropyl alcohol. That is how you remember. So we have to look at the double gap, anion gap and osmotic gap. I told you what is osmolar gap and osmolarity gap. I also told you how to work out the anion gap and also the delta anion gap. Now, this is a flow chart which is a very easy way of diagnosing a patient of metabolic acidosis. How do I go about that? See that now. Metabolic acidosis, is there a very large, how do I know metabolic acidosis? First of all, pH is low. HCO3, the primary variable, is low, and PCO2 also is low. All three variables are low. Then I am dealing with metabolic acidosis. How do I differentiate? Is there a very large hydrogen load in a short period of time? Is there a history of intake of lot of acid either parenterally or orally by the patient? Yes means hypoxic lactic acidosis, there is a history of myocardial infarction, there is hypoxemia, there is lactic acid is added to the body, or ingestion of an acid containing substance like a salicylate or any other acid, or ingestion of ethanol. Ethanol, as you know, is an alcohol. In the absence of thymine, ethanol cannot be metabolized to carbon dioxide and water. That is why alcoholics should have good vitamin B supply. If the thymine is absent, B1, ethanol takes the route of aldehyde and acetic acid. Okay, ethanol gets converted into acetaldehyde and acetic acid, which are acidic in nature. Normally, the metabolism of ethanol is carbon dioxide and water. For that, it requires thymine. So, ethanol poisoning in the absence of thymine can immediately lead to excess acid in the body. That is it. No. There is no evidence of any excess acid added to the body in a short time. Are there any new anions in the plasma? You think about that. Other than these things, any other anions could have gone into the plasma. What are those anions? Could be keto acids, could be beta hydroxybutyric acid, it could be acetoacetic acid due to diabetic ketoacidosis, or could be other acids that are added to the body. Then immediately, if the answer you think is yes, then look at the blood volume. EABV means effective arterial blood volume. Is the effective arterial blood volume very low? But that means there is hypotension, and you can see that there is hypoperfusion is seen. If there is dehydration and hypotension, as can be seen in a diabetic ketoacidosis, coupled with metabolic acidosis, think of ketoacids or alcoholic ketoacidosis. These are the two important conditions when there is evidence of EABV, which is effective arterial blood volume is less, as evidenced by hypoperfusion, hypotension, and then tachycardia and things like that. You know, diabetic ketoacidosis typically is a disorder with dehydration. You need to hydrate the patient faster. Because of the dehydration, you can see EABV will be lower. No, it is not lower. Then, what is the GFR? Is the glomerular filtration affected? If so, it is the renal acidosis. It is due to the renal insufficiency. If the creatinine is normal, from the creatinine we can derive using the MDR formula the eGFR, you know that. And if the eGFR is normal, then we are thinking something else. If it is lower, that means that depressed renal function, renal insufficiency is the cause. So we have got this is one of the very important causes. This is also very, very important. Two causes are covered. Then look at the plasma osmolar gap. That's what we are thinking. The osmolar gap is the measured osmolality minus the calculated osmolality. If that is not gap is not there, then you are looking at D-lactic acidosis, pyroglutamic acidosis, non-hypoxic acidosis. Suppose the osmolar gap is higher, an osmotic substance is added like a methanol or ethylene glycol. So this completes the side of where we have excess of some of these keto acids or methanol or ethylene glycol or renal insufficiency with acidosis or D-lactic acidosis or whatever it is. This is the flow chart. Go to the other side. There is no possibility of new anions being added in a given patient. Let us say. Then what is the ammonia excretion? Is the kidney able to excrete the acid ion? That I will test. Okay. If the kidney is ammonia excretion is there a excretion of ammonia is high? It is not. then ammonia is not produced, that is acid ions are not excreted, there is no urine ammonia very much there, and it is either a distal RTA or a proximal RTA, because ammonia excretion is not increased, or on the other hand it is lower. Suppose the ammonia excretion is higher in the urine, what is the anion that is excreted with the ammonia? Is it chloride or non-chloride? If it is chloride, it is diarrhea. If it is non-chloride, hippurate and ketoacidosis. Okay, this is the differential diagnosis. I think this is the wonderful chart that I came across to differentiate various types of metabolic acidosis. All this on the left hand side are due to high anion gap. On the right hand side, this is the diagram. This is the high anion gap, and these are the ones which are the low and normal anion gap, NAGMA, and this is the AGMA. So remember this flow chart, practice on this and think over why I said that these things occur. This is the easiest way. Then we come to condition called metabolic alkalosis. How do I know it is metabolic alkalosis? There the pH was lower. Alkalosis means pH more than 7.45. So pH is higher. When the hydrogen ion concentration is lower, the pH is inverse logarithm. pH will be higher. And because it is alkalosis, the alkali will be higher. Because it is basically metabolic, the primary variable is bicarbonate and the secondary variable will be PCO2. Why PCO2 is increased? Because there is excess bicarbonate, it wants to excrete the excess, there is excess bicarbonate here, the PCO2 is increased. This is how does the PCO2 increase? That is, this is secondary variable there, and the formula is 0.1 for every 1 milli equivalent. PCO2 to increase, respiratory rate should be depressed. PCO2 to decrease, there must be hyperventilation. Here, the respiratory rate is decreased and PCO2, carbon dioxide excretion is reduced, the PCO2 increases. Why the PCO2 increases? PCO2 increases means carbonic acid will increase. Carbonic acid is acid that corrects the alkalosis. In order to correct the alkalosis or excess base, some acid is added to the body by the lungs. What is that acid? That acid is carbonic acid. How does it add that acid? It retains carbon dioxide which is dissolved in water, is carbonic acid. How does it retain carbon dioxide? By depressing the respiration. Once it depresses the respiration, the PCO2 will go up. So, the primary variable is bicarbonate, the secondary variable or the respiratory variable is the carbon dioxide which is increased. In metabolic alkalosis, all are in the same direction, same MD. Metabolic means the direction is the same. If pH is up, bicarbonate is up, carbon dioxide concentration is up. Whereas if it is metabolic acidosis, pH is down, bicarbonate is down, PCO2 also is down. Here the respiratory rate and depth are controlled. But the problem is respiratory rate and depth cannot be brought down to a great level. At least the minimum amount of respiration is required. So the ability of the lung to compensate for this is comparatively less. When you look at the metabolic acidosis, where hyperventilation and then increased rate and depth can occur to a greater degree than depression of the respiration and hypoventilation. Okay, remember that. What is the mnemonic? Mnemonic is CLEVER PD. CLEVER is contraction of the extracellular volume, Lycorice ingestion, endocrine causes particularly cons, Cushing's and Barters, vomiting and nasogastric suction. That means the gastric acid is withdrawn. Because the gastric acid is withdrawn, there is alkalosis. Excess alkali, milk alkali syndrome and other things, refeeding alkalosis, that is, you feed with alkalis or you add alkaline solution or you give more of soda bicarb and other things. Post-hypercapnia, when there is hypercapnia, the body tries to produce metabolic alkalosis, or diuretics and chronic diarrhea can also produce metabolic alkalosis. Not acute diarrhea. Acute diarrhea results in metabolic acidosis. Chronic diarrhea produces metabolic alkalosis. So remember, clever PD is a mnemonic contraction of the extracellular volume, licorice, endocrinopathies like Conn's, Cushing's, and Bartter, vomiting and nasogastric suction, where GI acid is removed, excess alkali in case of milk alkali syndrome or antacids use, and refeeding alkalosis, post-hypercapnia, diuretics, and chronic diarrhea. So we now discussed what are the various causes or etiological factors of metabolic alkalosis and what actually occurs with the three variables. Again, when there is a decrease in the hydrogen ion concentration, as in alkalosis, this is reflected inverse of hydrogen concentration, pH is increased, and you also have bicarbonate, which is the base, because alkalosis base is increased. This is metabolic. This is the primary variable. Secondarily, there is a depression of respiration and retention of carbon dioxide, and the PCO2 increases. That increases the carbonic acid to correct the bicarbonate there. This is a secondary variable. Historical features: milk alkali syndrome, hypercalcemia, beta-lactam antibiotics, cystic fibrosis, refeeding alkalosis, recent alkali administration either by vein or orally. If they are there, first of all, find out in the history, is it milk alkali, is it hypercalcemia, is there beta-lactam, is it cystic fibrosis, is it alkali administration? If none of these are there, immediately look at the urine chloride. Is the urine chloride less than 20 or more than 20? Some books give us 15. Doesn't matter. You take it as 20 or 15. The message is the same. Let us say the urinary chloride is less than 20 millimoles per liter. Then low urinary chloride is the answer. Low urinary chloride occurs in recent diuretic therapy, gastric chloride losses, post-hypercapnia, and villus adenomas. Villus adenoma of the GI tract. So these are the causes of metabolic alkalosis without any history of those alkali added, and low urinary chloride. Supposing urinary chloride is high, more than 20, not higher, just more than 20, which is of course normal, then look at the blood pressure. Is the blood pressure normal or elevated? If there is no hypertension, normal blood pressure, continuing diuretic therapy, Bartter syndrome, Gettleman syndrome, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia are the causes. Suppose the BP is elevated and the chloride is more than 20 and there is no addition of any alkali now, then look at the serum renin. Is the serum renin high or the serum renin low? If the serum renin is high, ongoing diuretic therapy, renal artery stenosis, renin secreting tumors, malignant hypertension are the answers. Suppose renin activity is lower, then something else is retaining the salt. Is it sodium? Is it the aldosterone? Then look at the serum aldosterone. If the serum aldosterone is low, Cushing's syndrome, corticosteroid use, 17-hydroxylase deficiency, Liddle syndrome, licorice overindulgence. Suppose the serum aldosterone is high, hyperaldosteronism, adrenal adenoma, adrenal hyperplasia, aldosterone synthetase hyperactivity. So how do I go about? First, look at the history for any alkali ingestion or alkali excess. If that is there, that is the cause. Exogenous alkali excess or hyperkalemia or beta-lactams or cystic fibrosis or alkali administration. If they are not there, look at the urine chloride. The urine chloride is less than 20. We are dealing with recent diuretic therapy, gastric chloride losses, post-hypercapnia, villus adenoma. If the urine chloride is more 20 or more, then look at hypertension. If hypertension is not there, normal blood pressure, Bartter's, diuretic therapy, Gettleman syndrome, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia. We know that acidosis goes with hyperkalemia, alkalosis goes with hypokalemia. Earlier also we have understood. And calcium and magnesium, kalemia and magnesemia, they go together. Potassium and magnesium, they move together. They are friends. So when you have hypokalemia, there will be also associated hypomagnesemia mostly. So once there is no hypertension, those are the axes. Suppose there is hypertension, serum renin levels we have to look. If the renin levels are high, it is again renal artery stenosis, renin secreting tumor, or malignant hypertension. If the renin levels are lower, then look at the aldosterone being the culprit. If the aldosterone is low, Cushing syndrome, glucocorticoid excess, corticosteroid excess, 17-hydroxylase deficiency, Liddles and Licorise. If it is higher, hyperaldosteronism, adrenal adenoma, adrenal hyperplasia, aldosterone synthetase. So this is how we work up. I have shown you a flowchart for metabolic acidosis. I have also shown you a detailed flowchart for metabolic alkalosis. Now, in general, how do I approach the acid-base disorders? First thing is look at the pH. Once the pH is lower, look for anion gap. Anion gap is sodium minus bicarbonate minus chloride is anion gap. If the anion gap is less than 12, that is NAGMA. Then what is the bicarbonate? Bicarbonate is depressed, pH also is depressed. I am dealing with non-anion gap metabolic acidosis or NAGMA. The bicarbonate is normal, then only there is a sort of anion gap is normal, and then only the pH is reduced, but the bicarbonate is still normal. So bicarbonate is more means there is the pH will be higher in this case, and metabolic acidosis. Look at the pH and also look at here the pH also is normal. Here the pH is higher, here the pH is lower. So pH bicarbonate go in the same direction, metabolic alkalosis. So when the anion gap is more than 12 or the delta gap is more than 2, delta anion gap is equal to anion gap calculated minus the 10 is equal to elevation of the anion gap, and also look at the bicarbonate gap, delta bicarbonate. Delta bicarbonate is what is the serum bicarbonate given and what is the calculated bicarbonate after adding the anion gap to that, and that tells you whether the bicarbonate delta is there. If the anion gap is more, but the bicarbonate also is more, anion gap is more means anion gap is metabolic acidosis. Bicarbonate also is more means there is an associated metabolic acidosis. By delta bicarbonate is more means there is associated metabolic acidosis. NAGMA plus AGMA. If both are anion gap is and bicarbonate are equivocal, they are not raised. Anion gap metabolic acidosis, bicarbonate is not affected. So now you compare these two. That means the anion gap is much more than the bicarbonate gap. Bicarbonate, delta bicarbonate is not that much elevated, but the anion gap is much elevated. In such a condition, we are dealing with bicarbonate is lower, anion gaps are higher. That is a classical case of metabolic acidosis. There is both anion gap acidosis as well as NAGMA. But if the anion gap is more compared to the bicarbonate delta, that means that's all, there is no difference, almost no. Anion gap and bicarbonate, delta bicarbonate are normal or almost the same. It's a pure metabolic acidosis of AGMA. The other way around. Anion gap is there, but the bicarbonate excess is very much seen, in which case you have a metabolic acidosis plus a metabolic alkalosis. So this is a mixed disorder. When we come to the examples, you will understand this much better when you work out the delta bicarbonate and all. Now, we go to the respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. What is the respiratory acidosis? Respiratory acidosis means the primary pathology is in the lung, and the lungs are keeping the carbon dioxide very much inside. The acidosis due to the depression of the respiration and retention of the carbon dioxide. dioxide. Carbon dioxide is retained in the body. Carbon dioxide we know is carbonic acid, and carbonic acid thus produces a respiratory acidosis. The kidney is the compensating variable. Here, what will happen to the pH? Of course, any pH in acidosis will be lower because the carbon dioxide is retained, the primary variable is higher, and the compensatory variable bicarbonate also tries to compensate for the acid. It goes up. So this is what exactly is the picture. So pH and the carbon dioxide are in the opposite direction. That is what is called the ROME. Okay, respiratory opposite, metabolic equal side or same side. Okay, or ROMS also is the metabolic same side. RO is respiratory opposite, M means metabolic, same side will be the of the pH. The primary variable is important. In metabolic acidosis, the primary variable is bicarbonate, secondary variable is PCO2. So this is depressed, this is also depressed, this is also depressed, metabolic acidosis. Metabolic alkalosis, pH is elevated, bicarbonate also is elevated, primary variable. The secondary variable also is elevated due to depression of the respiration. Whereas in respiratory acidosis, pH is lower because it's acidosis, but the primary variable is PCO2. PCO2 is higher, compensatory variable also goes up. Whereas respiratory alkalosis, the pH will be higher because it's alkalosis, and the PCO2 is lower, and bicarbonate also is lower. So respiratory opposite side, metabolic same side, or MD or ME. MD's direction is the C. Okay, acute or chronic, has the kidney had enough time to compensate? Because kidney we know takes time to compensate. Whereas something is happening in the kidney, the lungs immediately come into picture because that can adjust very quickly with the respiratory rate. Whereas in the kidney, it takes time for the kidney to really alter its buffer excretion or acid conservation or acid excretion. So to secrete hydrogen ion or to manufacture ammonia ion or to recapture the bicarbonate or to synthesize the bicarbonate, kidney requires some time. The source of the buffer, we need to produce the bicarbonate there. So it's different in these states, and thus we need to make the distinction between respiratory acidosis and metabolic acidosis. Now, elevation of the carbon dioxide above the normal. What is the normal PCO2? Normal PCO2 is equal to 40 in the arterial blood. We are talking about arterial blood only. ABG only we do know arterial blood gas. So normal PCO2 is equal to 40, and here the PCO2 will be elevated. Why? The respiration is depressed, carbon dioxide is retained, so carbon dioxide PCO2 will increase with a normal with a drop in the extracellular pH. This is accompanied by low pH, high PCO2 indicate respiratory acidosis. Rate of carbon dioxide elimination is lower than the production. What are the categories? What commonest causes CNS depressants? Barbiturate poisoning. Common thing in olden days, barbiturates. Barbiturate poisoning is a common thing. Nowadays we don't use much of the barbiturate, but still any other CNS depressions, either stroke or acute hemorrhage in the brain or drugs or excess alcohol or whatever it is, CNS depression can occur. And with that, the respiratory rate and depth are depressed, so much so the excretion of carbon dioxide is limited. The carbon dioxide is not thrown out, carbon dioxide is retained in the body. That increases the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Because the carbon dioxide is retained, it is carbonic acid. This acid depresses the pH. pH will be lower, PCO2 will be higher. Then the pleural disease, let's say there is severe pleurisy. Patient is not able to take deep breath because of the pleurisy. One side lung movement is restricted. Again the excretion of carbon dioxide suffers. Or there is a chronic lung disease like COPD which hampers the excretion because it is expiratory problem. COPD is an expiratory problem and not an inspiratory problem. ARDS, as in case of COVID or any other pneumonia or acute viral pneumonia, so bacterial pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome can set in, which hampers in the gas exchange and retention of the carbon dioxide, which can lead to respiratory acidosis. Or let us say there is myasthenia or muscle poisoning due to some various disorders, musculoskeletal disorders, or there is a fracture of the rib. There is no breathing occurring on one side because of the fractured rib. Any musculoskeletal disorders, they depress the respiration. So carbon dioxide is retained, PCO2 increases, carbonic acid is formed, that decreases the pH. And it could be a compensatory mechanism of a metabolic alkalosis. Of course, when there is metabolic alkalosis, we know the respiration will be depressed as a compensation to produce excess acid, and that could be resulting overcorrection and can lead to respiratory acidosis. So understand that respiratory acidosis is a condition where the lungs are not able to excrete the carbon dioxide as equivalent to the production. That is, the elimination of carbon dioxide is not equivalent but much lower than the production in the body. So then what happens? Then carbon dioxide increases in the blood, which increases the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Normally it is 40. This carbon dioxide gets dissolved in water, becomes carbonic acid, which depresses the pH. So the first variable pH is lower, acidosis, but the primary variable carbon dioxide is higher, PCO2. That is the way in which respiratory thing, RO respiratory, opposite, metabolic, same side, ROMS is the acronym there, and we use the mnemonic that way. Now, what are the causes of respiratory depression? There are 5 major categories. CNS depression, either due to neurovascular problems like stroke or any other neurological conditions which depress the respiration, or barbiturates, drugs can be the common cause, any other respiratory depressants, excess use of sedatives, anxiolytics, and somebody takes around 50 tablets of Alprax or something, respiratory depression can occur. Then pleural disease, if there is pleurisy and if there is sort of pain due to pleurisy, or there is a pleural effusion, a massive effusion on one lung, the lung collapses. So the excretion of the carbon dioxide is at fault because of pleural disease, the pain of pleurisy or fluid-filled pleura due to pleural effusion. Lung diseases such as COPD will not allow the air to be properly exhaled. It is an expiratory problem, and that can lead to respiratory acidosis. ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, as you have seen in COVID and other viral pneumonias, the gas exchange mechanism is at fault and carbon dioxide is retained in the body. That increases the PCO2 and causes respiratory acidosis. Musculoskeletal disorders like myasthenia, a fracture of the rib, any other muscle poisoning, or any other disorders of the musculoskeletal system will reduce the movement of the respiratory case. The pump handle and the bucket handle movements of the ribs are at fault, and naturally the expansion of the lungs is at fault, and exchange of gases is reduced, and PCO2 builds up. That decreases the pH with associated increase in the PCO2. And finally, whenever there is metabolic alkalosis, in order to neutralize the alkali bicarbonate, acid is produced in the lung by way of retaining the carbon dioxide by depressed respiration. And that retained carbon dioxide becomes carbonic acid, compensates for the alkali, the bicarbonate there. If it overshoots, it can result in respiratory acidosis. Okay, I went twice on the same slide. Come on. Respiratory acidosis, acute and chronic. Acute means hydrogen ion is titrated by non-bicarbonate organic tissue buffer. That is, hemoglobin is the example. Suppose in acute respiratory acidosis, there is an excess hydrogen ion in the body and bicarbonate comes late in the picture. Here, bicarbonate is not the one which is affected, it is the hemoglobin that comes to fore. The kidney has little involvement in this acute phase. So then what happens? For every 10 millimeters increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, the pH should fall by 0.08. Let us say a patient's PCO2 is 60, normal should be 40, so 20 millimeters of partial pressure is more, and each 10 millimeters 0.08 and 20 millimeters will be into 20 is equal to 0.16. So that will be the effect on the pH. pH is dropped to that extent. So, but for every increase in the 10 millimeters increase in carbon dioxide, there is a drop of 0.08 in the pH. In the chronic, the mechanism here is renal synthesis and retention of the bicarbonate. There is a time for the kidney to act, and bicarbonate is added as a compensation to the acidosis. We see that chloride will decrease to balance the charges. We know the Na is balanced against chloride and bicarbonate. So it is the bicarbonate that is added because of the acidosis by the kidney as a compensatory mechanism, and consequently chloride will be reduced. There is a hypochloremic chronic metabolic acidosis as a compensation to the respiratory acidosis. Here, every 10 millimeters increase in the carbon dioxide, pH should decrease by 0.03. Here, in acute, it is 0.08. In chronic, it is 0.03. These are important, these numbers. For you to do some calculations, we do require these numbers. Okay. So we have now in respiratory, we have two things, an acute versus chronic. Now, respiratory alkalosis. I don't know, maybe we will complete this and stop. Initiated by a fall in the carbon dioxide. How does the fall occur? By excessive ventilation, by hyperventilation. Maybe anxiety, maybe salicylates, maybe any other, maybe hysterical hyperventilation, or maybe respiratory stimulation by certain drugs and whatever it is. The active process which lowers the bicarbonate associated with mild hypokalemia, because alkalosis and hypokalemia go hand in hand, but this is more pronounced with metabolic alkalosis. Here hypokalemia is mild. Chloride is retained to offset the loss of bicarbonate, so there will be hyperchloremia. Acute response is independent of the renal compensation, as in the previous case, whereas in the chronic, the kidney comes into the picture. What are the causes? Intracerebral hemorrhage, drug use, salicylates and progesterone, decreased lung compliance and anxiety, and cirrhosis of liver and sepsis are some of the causes of increased respiratory drive to produce respiratory alkalosis. Respiratory alkalosis is chronic and acute. On the acute or chronic, the kidney has enough time or not, we have to see. In acute, kidney doesn't have enough time. In acute, it is 10 millimeters versus 0.8, just like in the previous calculation. There it is depression of the pH, here it is increase of the pH as a compensation, and here the primary variable pH is increased because of the alkalosis. The secondary variable PCO2 is depressed and bicarbonate also is depressed. So they are on the opposite side, respiratory opposite. Here in the chronic, again the same calculation, 0.3 for every 10 mm, but it takes time. After 2 weeks, we may have a complete compensation at the kidney, and this is demonstrated in people living in high altitudes. Hypoxia-induced hyperventilation. In high altitudes, what happens? There is oxygen partial pressure is lower. Because the oxygen partial pressure is lower, the amount of the oxygen absorbed in each breath is lower. So much your body tries to compensate by producing hyperventilation. This is what exactly happens in exercise also. If you do vigorous exercise, there will be hypoxia. This hypoxia, to compensate, body tries to draw in more oxygen by increasing the respiratory drive. But it is short-lived. After the exercise stops, again it is corrected. Whereas in case of high altitudes, they reside for some time, they get into respiratory alkalosis. So now what did we do? We have understood metabolic acidosis. We understood metabolic alkalosis. We have also understood the two types of metabolic acidosis, NAGMA and the AGMA, the bicarbonate gap, the delta bicarbonate, the delta anion gap, the urinary anion gap, osmolar gap, all the things we have understood, and we came to respiratory. In the respiratory acute, there is a we came to the metabolic alkalosis. We understood the causes of metabolic alkalosis, the work of metabolic alkalosis with the flow chart there. And then we have the respiratory problems, respiratory acute and chronic, acute acidosis, chronic acidosis, likewise acute alkalosis, chronic alkalosis. We knew that in the metabolic, the pH and the primary variable will be going in the same direction. If it is acidosis, pH will drop, primary variable bicarbonate also will drop, secondary variable PCO2 also will drop, both all are in the same direction. If it is metabolic alkalosis, pH of course will be alkaline, that is higher, and then the primary variable bicarbonate, this is the alkali, will be higher, secondary variable carbon dioxide also will be higher. Whereas in case of respiratory, if the pH drops due to respiratory acidosis, the primary variable carbon dioxide increases because of carbon dioxide retention is the primary cause. Whereas when there is respiratory alkalosis, the pH will go up, the carbon dioxide will come down due to respiratory overactivity or hyperventilation. This is all we have learned today, and a quick recap we will start next week. After the recap, we will go in for the calculation part of this story. Let us see how much you have retained. And yesterday I wanted to give you some questions. I did not give because I wanted to complete all the 4, respiratory and metabolic, acidosis, alkalosis, everything. Now I will give you some 6 or 8 questions. There is a lot of time from now to next Tuesday. You answer them and come back to me, and let us see how do you understand those.